Chapter 6. Faceless made his way to Stellan Road. Warlock's Way, were the locals called it. Those of Seedy Acres knew the street well. It was where the Warlocks conducted business. The ones in Amganis referred to it as the cesspool. Faceless knew the seaport was the reason Amganis was even part of the city. Without the sea trade, there would be no city to be called Amganis, locally referred to as Greater Joron. However, Seedy Acres was still responsible for much of their trade. Members of the Enforcement Coalition were charged with keeping tabs on the dealings in Seedy Acres, but Faceless was kept abreast of what transpired. To date, his men had done an exemplary job of keeping order within the violent ramshackle section of the city, and not a single contract had crossed his desk for the murder of a practicing warlock on Stellan Road. This meant there was no loss of revenue to the Coalition from a vacant shop. Since the inception of the Enforcement Coalition and its affiliates, Seedy Acres had undergone a transformation. Where lawlessness once reigned, there was now tentative cooperation amongst the citizens. No matter how hard his organization tried to bring them together, they were too ingrained in the old ways to change. The tension was always palpable in this section of the city. One experienced a feeling of dread and unease when traversing the streets. This visit was to find a warlock who could manage what he required. Faceless needed someone who was gifted with Reficiat Impredite, restorative incantations of grand power. A sorcerer who could keep his mouth shut. Someone who could be manipulated without strenuous effort. Someone who understood their place in the partnership, so long as the Coalition benefited with the more significant portion of the proceeds. Stellan Road was the dirtiest part of Seedy Acres. The streets were filthy and the shops were in disrepair. Every building seemed to lean against its neighbor, holding each other to stay clear of the filth on the street. Ramshackle seemed a kind word for how the buildings appeared. Even the docks were in better shape, and they saw more traffic by far. Faceless vowed he would have this place rival the wealthier section of the city before the National Council was in place in ruling Lysandras. Faceless turned onto Stellan Road from Hindren Street, the first shop on his left, situated snugly against the wall surrounding Amganis. Kelton's shop. The warlock was a charlatan, and a poor one at that. His store held all the items you would expect to find in a shop whose proprietor was a sorcerer. Only Kelton held no power at all. His wares were of inferior quality, and his clientele were mainly sailors and prostitutes. The smell of the store assaulted Faceless's nose before he was within 15 feet of the entrance. He pulled a vial of fragrance from his pocket and dabbed the covering that concealed his face. He always carried several bottles with him when he was outside Enforcement Coalition headquarters. He could drop the liquid from the bottle should the city civil force use dogs to try and track him. When he had a significant enough lead, he simply changed the bottles and continued in another direction, while the dogs circled in confusion over the sudden disappearance of the scent they were tracking. The sign above Kelton's shop was a mortar and pestle. This usually signified an apothecary. Kelton had decided his work was close enough to justify using the symbols. The wood which held the decayed and flaking drawing appeared to be a piece of a ship's hull. The storefront glass window, displays of different bottles just behind its opaque surface, was cracked from top to bottom on a slant. The whole thing made Faceless grimace as he thought about entering the putrid interior and speaking with Kelton. Stepping over the corpse of a long-dead cat, Faceless entered the store. The pungent smell assaulted his nose through the scent of his covering, forcing him to take shallow breaths through his mouth. This only served to leave a terrible taste on his tongue. Most of the time, his sense would overpower just about any odor, but Kelton's improperly stored wares permeated his face covering and fragrance with no problem. Typically a level-headed man, Faceless pondered killing Kelton and razing the shop to the ground. Two things stopped him from acting impulsively. He needed the store for the new supplies he would be bringing into the seaport, and the trouble it might cause should the fire become uncontrollable, burning Seedy Acres to the ground just to rid the world of Kelton, was not worth the trouble. Blinking away tears forming in his eyes from the smell, Faceless made his way to the counter. No one was standing there, and he noticed no bell for service. Whoever owned this shop was unafraid of thieves stealing from him, and with good reason. The smell alone would deter anyone from taking something back to their house and have it permeate their furniture and rugs. Whoever might be bold enough to remove something would return it with an apology and a coin for Kelton to take it back. Faceless nearly regretted his decision to enter the shop and needed the property to store his illicit merchandise. He could always quietly remove Kelton and place another in his stead. Someone who would cleanse the building, eliminating the horrific odor that seemed to permeate everything. Faceless vowed to bathe before he returned to the coalition. This meant he would have to travel outside the city, find a secluded pool of water, and clean himself while scrubbing the smell from his clothing. For this, Kelton would pay. Anyone about? Faceless called before he changed his mind, taking the chance of raising the store to the ground. Just a moment, called a weak voice. Be there in 2 shakes. Don't rush on my account, shopkeeper. The smell in here is most pleasing, and I would hate to miss spending time in the aromatic atmosphere you have created. One would almost believe you were competing with the perfume makers of Obelsix. Would never dream of keeping a customer waiting, a stooped, pockmarked man said, dropping the curtain that separated the front of the store from the back. What can old Kelton do for you? I need your assistance in locating. Faceless stopped speaking when the color drained from Kelton's face. The man stumbled against the counter, nearly falling to the floor in his haste to back away from him. Several vials spilled from the shelf behind Kelton, adding to the atrocious smell in the shop. Faceless nearly cursed aloud as the scent assaulted his nose. Whatever Kelton was, for he was abnormal, he must have suffered damage to his nail past to work in the stench. No one in their right mind would choose to work in this filth and stink. Forgive me, Master Faceless, Kelton stammered, trying his best to remain upright while repeating bowing motions. Had I but known it was you. I am not under contract, Faceless told him, placing his gloved hands on the countertop that looked as if it were growing moss from it, showing he held no weapons. Seek information. Your ability to provide an answer has no bearing on what will transpire next. I shall leave your shop in the same state it was before I entered, unless a mitigating circumstance arises. You have my word. Thanks the stars, Kelton said, mopping his brow. I thought for sure I was a goner. Nothing of the sort, Faceless lied. I require assistance with a delicate matter that will involve a secrecy agreement between us. Whether you can provide the information I seek will in no way nullify the pact. You know what will happen should you breach the agreement between us, right? The remainder of the color drained from Kelton's face. I will help if I am able. And the agreement? Faceless pressed. I know. I'm dead should I refuse, Kelton stammered. Faceless wondered what caused the hesitancy. The little man before him was deliberately giving thought to whether he wanted to accept the agreement. No one refused him, yet this wheezing, stooped figure was refusing to commit to an answer. The only reason he could think of was the man was contracted to another coalition or an affiliate. Why do you hesitate, shopkeeper? Keep your answer accurate and simple, Kelton. Any attempt at subterfuge will result in a new shopkeeper in this establishment. Faceless knew his voice had become menacing, but there was nothing for it. Between the atrocious orders and the old man's hesitancy, he would kill him and find someone to take the location over. Be mindful of the next words you speak. I am bonded to another member, Kelton admitted. This is why I hesitate. A pact of secrecy with you would violate the agreement I have with the other man. You see my dilemma? Faceless was not going to eliminate the man and take the shop for the coalition when he first arrived. He had wanted to cause as little disturbance to the status quo as possible. However, Kelton's audacity could not go unpunished. His plans for Stellan Road involved a complete renovation, and the additional people frequenting the street would mask the men who would store the illicit merchandise within this building. The location was ideal. The building next to him was vacant and would provide more storage space. Keeping the comings and goings hidden was nothing more than tunneling between the two shops. Should Kelton prove untenable, he would simply have to ensure no one nosed in the coalition's business when he killed the old man. Explain to me the whole of your agreement with this other member, Faceless urged. I might be able to find a loophole to my advantage. Before you refuse, I have something I will present to you that could possibly see you wealthy beyond most nobles. Refusal means I would be left with no choice but to find another to take possession of this building. I am to report everything said in my shop to the mother member, Kelton said, his voice and body quivering in fear. No loopholes at all, Master Faceless. Boldly spoken, shopkeeper. I admire your honesty. Faceless's hand blurred. Kelton's eyes widened as he felt the sting of the blade that had just cut his throat. A warm liquid began to spill down the front of his soiled shirt. Whenever he tried to speak, only a gurgling sound escaped his lips. His vision grew blurry, and then began to narrow into a smaller and smaller circle. Within moments, Kelton slid to the floor dead. Stepping back from the spreading pool of blood, Faceless watched as the light faded from the shopkeeper's eyes until they glazed over in death. This would mean the man with whom Kelton had an agreement would be searching for an answer as to why his contact had been murdered. This did not concern Faceless. He knew the news of the old man's death would reach the ends of Joron before he finished his business on Stellan Road. Faceless stepped out of Kelton's shop into the street. There was a large crowd gathered on the sidewalk opposite him. He knew it was his appearance that drew the attention. It was, after all, his first visit back to this part of the seaport since the night he was abused by 3 men. His first thought was anger, but he quickly squashed the emotion. Natural curiosity would soon turn into fear once Kelton's body was discovered. Ignoring the stares, Faceless moved out into the street. People hastily moved down the road away from him. 3 doors later, and on the opposite side of Warlock's Way, Faceless spied a clean window that displayed an assortment of jars, vials, and glasses in neat, orderly rows. From the look of the display, this shop appeared to be run by someone who, regardless of the exterior, took pride in his shop and his craft. Faceless knew the name of the shop owner, but believed Chone had been exaggerating about the cleanliness of the store. His man had been entirely accurate in his description of the condition of the interior, from what he could see through the window. He was hopeful since he could see through the glass without any obscurity that the inside would reflect what he could see. He knew Chone was a helpless poet at heart, but his words were nothing but the truth in this instance. Faceless entered the shop, breathing normally. The scent of his face covering was still present, but the store had a pleasant odor. Where Kelton's shop was designed to repel clientele with discerning taste and an eye for fraudulent goods, Frandon's store was clean, inviting, and a pleasant aroma wafted through the room. He needed to remember to tell Chone his admiration of Frandon's store was merited. The table next to the window was filled with every conceivable insect Los Angeles had to offer. Faceless walked around it twice, looking for something other than an insect within the collection that filled the entire surface of the tabletop. Frandon held a collection of dead bugs that would be the envy of any entomologist. Upon closer examination, Faceless found the liquids within each jar or vial were different than its neighbor. Most would miss the minute variations, but Faceless noticed them right off. Along the south wall were containers filled with every herb, plant, or seed a person could want or need for an elixir or potion. Each vessel he inspected held items in various stages of preparation. Whether this was by design, for ease of use, he had no way of knowing. Whatever the case, he was moderately impressed with Frandon's orderly manner. Moving to the other side of the room, he studied the shelves lining the northern wall of the shop. Inside these boxes and bags, clearly marked, stored a variety of animal bones, organs, and nails. Upon the ceiling hung a feather from birds native and foreign to Los Angeles. Frandon's store was a cornucopia of sorcerer's paraphernalia. "Faceless," a shocked voice called out. "What have I done?" "Nothing I have been made aware, shopkeeper." "What would make you assume you've done something wrong?" "Unless you have done something, and my timing is fortuitous." No, I have done nothing." It was a rhetorical question, shopkeeper. Of course. How silly of me. What do I owe the honor?" Faceless needed this second shop to keep an eye on the people who visited Kelton's old shop. Once the illegal merchandise began to arrive in the harbor, it would be transported to the building in the vacant one next door. Frandon's would provide the best vantage without being conspicuous. However, there was a minor issue of an agreement before he could continue. "Need information that requires a contract between you and I, Frandon. A secrecy contract against our lives. Do you have a pact with another member of the coalition or any of its affiliates?" The color drained from Frandon's features. Faceless kept his anger in check. Having to kill Kelton affected him more than he wanted to admit, but his temper seemed to ignite over the smallest thing today. Frandon was a warlock of minor strength. He held bricks in his body, but not in significant amounts. He could perform minor spells and cantrips, but the more complicated, powerful magic would be beyond his grasp. Kelton had set his plans back by at least a week, and he needed this shop and that shop to be ready in just days. "I am not bound to anyone," Frandon admitted. "Never had a reason to become contracted to a member of your organizations. Really would prefer not to be bound, Master Faceless." "Then I shall leave you to your business," Faceless replied, turning to leave. "Wait!" Frandon knew if Faceless walked out the door, it might bode ill for his welfare. Though there was no reason to think the assassin would kill him for not wanting to become bonded, he believed Faceless was upset over something, and it was in his best interest to keep the man from placing him on that list. "I never said I wouldn't. I would prefer not, is all." "You are smarter than your colleague, Frandon." Kelton was within someone else's employ, and now his shop needs a new proprietor. Frandon's Adam's apple bobbed several times as he swallowed. "I assume you want me to find someone to replace him?" "Not at all. I will place a worthy man in the now vacant location. What I need from you is an agreement to secrecy. Once you have consented, I can question you." "What is required?" Frandon asked. "I will accept your word, shopkeeper." "I have no choice," Frandon replied defeatedly. "There are always choices, Frandon. Some just have costlier stakes." "What have I agreed to?" "I need information about Reficiat Imperatate. Are you familiar with this magic?" "Restorative invocations were lost to history," Frandon informed Faceless, his tone steady. This was a topic he understood and could be of use to the man watching him closely. "The warlocks who practiced the magic are all dead. The war that nearly wiped magic from the planet was responsible for the loss of that particular skill," he informed Faceless. "Are you sure the magic is lost?" Faceless queried. "Does not one have the ability?" "To my recollection, there is no one alive who can perform the spell." "Explain further." "Details," Faceless urged. "I need more from you." Faceless watched as the puzzy short warlock swallowed several times while he was thinking about how best to begin. Were it not for the death of Kelton, he might not have found the movement humorous. "What do you know about profaners?" Without warning, Faceless was holding a dagger in his hand. He did not remember initiating the movement, yet the dagger was in his hand nevertheless. The reaction had him unsettled. His decisions were always deliberate, but at the mention of the word profaner, his body had betrayed him. Searching his memory of a moment ago, Faceless could not find where his drawing of the blade had been intentional. His body and mind acted independently of him. For the first time in decades, he felt out of balance. He knew his mind had not been tampered with. Rix would have warned him. However, he felt like an observer in his own body as it reacted to Frandon's question. I know what is written within the histories, Faceless told Frandon, sitting on the edge of the counter. What do profaners have to do with reficiat impredite? Frandon grabbed a bottle and 2 glasses from behind the counter, uncorking it. He asked, Would you care for a drink, Master Faceless? No. Do not let my recalcitrance stop you, however. Frandon took the first glass in a single gulp, his eyes watering as the liquid burned down his throat. Wiping at his eyes, Frandon poured a second glass. Faceless watched as the man's jowls turned a bright red color. He knew immediately from the smell the shopkeeper was drinking Kyson rum. Frandon's hands stopped shaking as he poured a second glass for himself. Explain what profaners have to do with restorative incantations before imbibing that second glass, Frandon. Kyson rum is the most potent alcohol we know, and it will relieve you of your senses quickly. We do not have time nor patience to interrogate a drunk man. Frandon placed the cork back into the top of the bottle. The first was for courage, he admitted. The second will be to maintain courage as we speak. I am not here under a contractual agreement, Faces told him. I need information about reficiat impredite. You seem knowledgeable about profaners and the spell I am inquiring about. Therefore, you need not fear to speak plainly. I might sound arrogant or offensive when speaking about the profaners, Frandon replied. The drink was to see me through the conversation without numerous delays that might anger you. No offense shall be taken, Faceless assured. You have my word. I shall leave you as I found you when I depart your store. Besides, I came to you, shopkeeper. Quite right, Frandon said, tapping his chin with his chubby finger as he thought where best to start. Where to begin, he mused. The connection between profaners and restorative spells, Faces advised. That would be a good place to begin the tale. Profaners use the life force of trees, animals, people, and themselves to power their magic. The more they drain from an object, the more powerful their spell. Profaners in the past have killed without remorse, drawing the energy from everything around them to become incredibly strong. The common consensus with those practitioners was, I can become a god if I drain enough life. However, this backfired horribly. Profaners were hunted to extinction. You have yet to explain the connection, Faceless warned. Profaners can store the power they have taken into objects to be used at a later date and time, Frandon explained. The energy pulled from a living object does not need to be lost. Kelton's death weighed less heavily on Faceless, as his timetable to have his illicit merchandise stored within the allotted time seemed to be coming to fruition. Frandon was providing him with the information he could use once he reached Jessfel's shop. Leverage, regardless of who supplied it, was a stock and trade of the Enforcement Coalition. And when he was talking to Jessfel, Frandon's information would give him a superior position from which to bargain. Should the profaner fail to store the energy they took, then it would dissipate until there was nothing left, Frandon replied, rubbing his chin. Where do they store this magic? Faceless asked, rising. What objects can hold power? And are there limitations on the amount of power stored? According to history books, profaners store the power in an object that has been prepped to receive the energy. No one alive today knows whether this is true or not. All of this is a moot point, Master Faceless. Profaners are extinct. Who would you say has the most knowledge about magic on Stellan Road? Frandon smiled. Jessfel, the warlock at the end of the road near the city wall. The man is a veritable stockpile of knowledge on magic and spells. Anything I might have missed or failed to recollect, he will know. Would Jessfel have the power to recreate the spell energy to store? Frandon began to fidget. He could not look Faceless in the eye. Why are you asking about dead magic? Don't waste your time with a pointless chase. Is that a command? No, I would never dream of it, Frandon drained the contents of his glass. Those who held Nist's power were hunted and killed. The Hartar of Uzalan were fanatical in the destruction of those who held the reviled magic. Every single person, men, women, children, elderly, murdered. Whole families were obliterated for fear of the magic might rise in offspring. I place no stock in history books, Faceless said. History is always written from a biased and inaccurate viewpoint. Whoever holds the power at the time the books are written dictates what will be written into them. The ones who could share the truth of the events are never considered. Real history can only be lived. Not so, Master Faceless. The practitioners nearly destroyed the world at one time. Nist is a malevolent, consuming power that cares nothing for life or death. All it craves is the annihilation of everything. It has been said by many who hold the power that Nist wants to die. The will, control, or whatever you choose to call what Nist is, seeks to destroy everything, itself included. And you believe this? Faceless queried, observing the man. My ancestors have suffered under profaners. We keep a history of our lineage, and it is full of the atrocities profaners committed in the world. You have answered my question, Frandon. I would ask another of you, this one relevant to our current time, and not of conjecture. Conjecture? He knew Faceless would not believe him, even should he produce his family's written history. I am looking to improve our seaport. I am looking for brave souls who will partner with the Enforcement Coalition. I plan to renovate Seedy Acres, forcing King Kalbark to abandon his campaign to raise our seaport to the ground. Would you require me as a partner? Frandon asked, genuinely confused. I know nothing of thieving or assassination. I am a modestly powered warlock who can provide minor healing and magic for a nominal fee. I would not be a good choice. There is going to be an influx of people and materials arriving shortly. I need your unblemished character and shop to keep track of the comings and goings of those who will take advantage of the influx to fill their own pockets. Kelton's shop was the first to commit his store. Your vantage of his shop will keep the honest people honest. I'll do what I can, Master Faceless, but my customers will not understand why I cannot spend time with them. My business is small, but I provide a service to others on the street that most shops cannot. Well, except for Jessville. I would need someone to fill that position. I can provide an assistant to keep an eye on Kelton's former location from your shop. This will leave you free to continue providing your services to those who seek it. Would this meet with your approval? Frandon frowned, rubbing his hands together. I cannot afford to hire an assistant, Master Faceless. I do well to keep myself fed and my shop open now. Faceless knew Frandon was lying. People who did not know what to look for when speaking to another person would miss the signs and continue in ignorance. He was not an average man, and Frandon was a terrible liar. I'll provide you with fair compensation for the use of your shop. The assistant will be paid by the Enforcement Coalition. I would be insane to refuse, Frandon said, his smile hidden in the man's jowls. Then we are agreed? Faceless asked. I don't personally have to spy on anyone. Your man will be the one to keep watch over that store from here. I have no stomach for intrigue. Faceless had never met a warlock who was not an avid participant in intrigue of some sort or another. And from Frandon's involuntary body reaction to his own lies, he wanted the partnership to grow in his own reputation on Warlock's way. You can leave the spying and intrigue to the one I sent you. And this will be in writing, Frandon asked sheepishly. Faceless gave the man credit. It was not every day someone stood up for themselves when he was involved. I do nothing without a contract, as you well know. I will have a barrister here first thing in the morning. Then my shop is at your disposal, Master Faceless. I do not require as much. Just enough space for my man to view the shop at the beginning of Stellan Road. Then I look forward to our agreement, Frandon stated with a broad smile on his face. There will be men coming to Stellan Road to initiate improvements I have devised for this street. Please extend them the same courtesy you would extend to me. Of course, Master Faceless. Faceless turned and headed for the door. Remember, he said pointedly, we are now partners, Frandon. I'll not forget, Brandon stammered, fear oozing from every word.